Hello and welcome to the Womxn Show. I'm Lenina Rassool, and today we are speaking about inspiring, empowering and upskilling children and youth. Now, the saying goes that children are the future, but we know that the resources in place to build up our young people is wholly inadequate. And often the blame for this is laid at the door of academic institutions such as schools and colleges. But the reality is that upskilling our young people is the responsibility of everyone, from our communities down to our families. After the break, we're going to be speaking to Wendy Abrahams, who is the founder of Advace Edukos Foundation, who runs after-school programs and holiday clubs, giving children a little bit extra in order to help them succeed. But before that, let's have a look at a short video about how to build a better society for our children. Let's have a look.
We all want a South Africa where children are safe. So we are determined to build a country which protects its children from violence and fear. Only then will long-term growth and development be possible. 1 in 3 children in South Africa is hurt by their parent or caregiver. 1 in 5 will experience sexual abuse before they turn 18. The impact is devastating on children, families, communities, and the country. To reach our potential as a nation, we must end this violence against children. Violence against children comes at great personal and economic cost. Children feel the lasting effects of violence as pain, depression, fear, and anxiety. Children who experience violence are more likely to use drugs, to be depressed, or to use violence themselves. The effects are long-term. Research shows that children will earn less as adults if they were bullied, insulted, beaten, raped, abused, or neglected. Many of South Africa's deep social problems could be prevented if our children were not exposed to violence. The South African government spends more than 126 billion rand a year on policing and the criminal justice system, but just 9 billion on programs to prevent violence. We must change our spending priorities and fund more violence prevention programs. Politicians need to lead the way by speaking out consistently and often to condemn all forms of violence against children. Government, communities, NGOs and researchers need to work together to invest more in the social, economic, and psychological well-being of our children. Let's spend more money on violence prevention that is proven to work. Reducing violence will take time, and it may not be easy, but it has to start now. We cannot allow another generation to carry the burden of violence. We have an urgent message for all politicians. Ensure your party commits to preventing violence against children. Speak out in an informed way and join our commitment. What is your commitment? Join us and say no to violence against children. Share your commitment and let's mobilize our leaders to do the same.
That was a short video on how to build better communities for our children. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching the Womxn Show, and today we are speaking about children, youth, and programs to inspire, empower, and uplift them. And joining me in studio is Wendy Abrahams, who is the founder of Advace Edukos Foundations. Welcome, Wendy, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity.
So, Wendy, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. You started the Advace Edukos Foundation to uplift and upskill young people, but please give us a rundown of what the organization is and how it started.
Okay, so we started during June of 2020, so in the heart of lockdown.
Yeah.
And it really just started as an additional support to young people in the community, offering some academic support as well as psychosocial support, counseling and so forth on a one-on-one basis. And it really just grew so fast over a period of 2 months. We realized that we were already reaching up to 40 young people. I think it was during November of 2020 when we were able to meet in groups, still smaller groups, but we were able to connect in that way. And that's really where the group activities birthed as art hubs. So we met the young people in a community church, and we had community art hubs, and we had up to 40 young people coming every Friday, wanting to upskill themselves, but also to heal, using art as a therapeutic tool, just to offer that type of psychosocial support to the young people.
I mean, that sounds great. I mean, during lockdown, also, it's amazing that you started then. And I'm going to come back to that and how that was possible and what was done. But I wanted to ask, so even before this, you were very passionate about and involved with uplifting young children and youth. And so often I find, especially in the sort of non-profit sector, the passion is born out of something, born out of a personal experience. There's a reason we pushed into sort of certain sectors. How did this passion start for you?
Yeah, I think there was two main contributors. One being I was bullied in primary school. So I was one of those children that had lice. And then, that was such a time in my life where young people were really, really cruel. I think that probably escalated over the years. But primary school was very tough for me. And then when I went to high school, I almost had my goal was to be noticed, to be the best. So I went from being a timid young girl in primary school to being one of the popular girls in high school. I got involved in dancing. Academically, I was strong. But there was a time, I think it was Senate 7, where I was involved in an incident where we were attacked on the Cape Flats, myself and my cousins, and it is from there where I think I lost myself again. And then I met a young man who said he's protecting me, he's my protector, and one thing led to another, and I fell pregnant. And I remember one significant day, I came home with my baby, and there was this group of ladies in the community, lived in the road, and they were chatting, and they said, they made some statements, and they said things like, my life would never amount to anything. That's the year all and end all for me. I will just be a mommy. My life is messed up. My education is messed up, and so on and so forth. And that kind of stuck with me. So for almost 10 years, I believed I can never achieve anything. My dreams and goals are shattered, and yeah, I can just be a mommy, and not that that's bad or insignificant, but career-wise, I could never do anything else. And for 10 years, that is how I felt. And during that years, I met quite a few people that did speak positively into my life. But it took quite a few people for me to convince me that there is more to life, and that I can be somebody, and that my dreams are important, and like the cliche, your story is important. And I pushed myself. It wasn't easy because of the responsibilities that I had, but I pushed myself. I went back to school. I completed matric and went to study further, did my degree and then my honors and so on. And then during that time, I realized there's so many young people that are going through the same thing that I went through, both in primary school and in high school. And they don't necessarily have support either. And they too are at that point where they're thinking, this is it for me. It's either going to be a gangster or sell drugs. And I remember also working at a children's home where one of the young boys said, Auntie Wendy, I'm going to sell fruit and veg, and I'm going to sell tuk, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And I thought, wow, this boy is following his dad is doing that. And for him, that is a goal, because he sees his dad's got money and his dad can buy him what he needs. So that's all he knows, and that is his dream. And I think for me, I just wanted to create a safe space for young people to dream the impossible dreams, the BHAG dreams. And that's really what Advanced Edukos is all about. It's a place for young people to manifest what they already have inside of them, but a safe space for them to just be, to be authentic, and for us to be authentic. I think one of the important things for me is that the staff are authentic, so that the staff would say things like, guys, today I'm tired, or I had an issue at home, and so that they can see, because sometimes we want to be superwoman or superman, and then the children think, I would never amount to that, or wow, that's big, or but it's important for them to know that they can do whatever their heart desires. It is possible. And I think that is what Advanced Edukos stand for, is creating purposeful pathways for young people and providing that platform to believe.
That's very inspiring, Wendy. I mean, I'm hearing you, and one of the things that's coming up now, especially what you said at the end, was the authenticity of it, and I think the story of that. And so what's so great and important about telling our stories, we know that there are a lack of role models for youth. Almost every article that's about youth we're talking about, and even I think when we meet within sectors and communities, we talk about there needs to be more role models. But you raise a really good point. When we don't tell authentic stories about where we come from and how hard the journey is often, and I think especially when we look at people coming from sort of less advantaged backgrounds, it's like it's framed as like a miracle that they made it out. The authentic journey from here to there is not, and how hard it is, and that it's really tough and difficult. That's not brought through. And so how important do you think it is to be, I think, authentic with kids, to tell the stories, not just about the good and what's possible, but also about the hardships? And I think I'm just asking because we're always talking to young people and always telling them to strive, without preparing them also, actually, that's going to be a hard journey, and that's going to test you, and it's okay for things to be difficult. It's important for us to bring those things into the narrative.
Yeah, no, it definitely is important, because they can relate, because they're going through hardships. So it's important for them to know that they can, even though the journey from point A to point B is difficult, with lots of pitfalls, lots of pathways, but they can achieve. So even teenage pregnancy, for example, it's important for young girls to know that, you can still pursue your dreams beyond having a child at a young age. For boys to know that if they do fall into become prey for gangsterism or substance abuse, that they can go beyond that. It's even that making that wrong decision doesn't mean it's the end for them. I think it's important. It's also up to us as society. We often hear the rhino becoming extinct or this bird becoming extinct. And I often ask people, are youth becoming extinct? How much awareness do we have around our youth? The recent stats show that over 90,000 young girls between 10 and 15 fell pregnant during 2021 and 2022. In South Africa, 90,000. It shows 64% of young people being unemployed. So we have these programs, but I sometimes think that our programs are not purposeful and we don't follow through on that journey. So it's one thing to take a child through a hairdressing course, for example. You give them the skill, you give them the equipment, and you say, okay, you send them off. There's no mentoring, there's no tracking. So for us, we have a program, and then we have an alumni program. So we still track. So we have 5, because we're a small organization, we have 5 young people that started in grade 10, and they are now finished with school. So we are tracking them, and some of them are at varsity, they're studying, some is working. Next year, this 2023, we're having our first alumni program, where we're going to invite them back and for them to share their stories, and we will celebrate them on our social media pages. We have one young lady who's currently studying, and she's trying to get into res because of her circumstances, her home life, and she's not getting enough time to study, and the electricity switching off, and there's so many other contributors that is causing her not to give her all when it comes to her studies. And I shared the story with her, the movie In Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith, and I said to her that in that movie he sits under little light. There's no light because he's living in a shelter with his boy, and he's studying, I think, to become a chartered accountant or something. And there's this little bit of light somewhere in the shelter, and he go and sit under the light with all his books, and he still makes a way to study. And that's what we're trying to teach them, is that sometimes we need to make a way or find a way to do what we want to do. And it's not always easy. And so when those obstacles come, that they would ride that obstacle, that you either go around it or you go through it. And when you go through it, you must make sure that you have the support that you need. So, for example, if you see yourself as a ship, you must make sure that you have a lifeboat, a life jacket, that you have a crew with you. Those are the type of skills that we show them, that they have the right tools in their hand, but that they can still accomplish everything that they have, all the boxes that they want to tick. They can do all of that. And there's this that side of the railway line narrative, and even with our 2 after-school programs, so we have one in Bayview, Strandfontein, and we have one in Rocklands. And when we first started, that existed there. That we, the Strandfontein kids thought that they were a little bit more privileged than the Rocklands children, which they probably were, but they acted it out.
It's like when I moved, like Kensington, Factoryton, in terms of where I grew up, and you have that sort of split, you know?
So they almost carried them they had this power over the other group, and we realized that we needed to connect them a little bit more. And then, so now with the holiday program, they all attend the holiday program together. And I got a call from a mom asking me if there's space in the Rocklands after-school program for this year, because her daughter would like to come over to the Rocklands program.
Oh, wow.
So they're at that point where they now have connected with one another. They became friends with one another, and they understand that actually, you're just like me. You have the same issues that I have as a young person, even though I might be a little bit more privileged than you, but we have the same issues, and so they can relate with one another, and they can learn from one another. So one thing that we also share in our program on a daily basis, at the end of every day, we have a little reflection session that we call Attitude of Gratitude, where we remind them to be grateful for something in their life for that day. And every day it's something new. And then you have the same children that have the same thing that they are grateful for, and that thing is the after-school space. They would say, I'm grateful for being here. Someone would say, I'm grateful for the food, because that's the only food, the only meal they have for the day. Someone would say, I'm grateful for the friends, I'm grateful for the love. Something that we just sometimes take for granted is the reason why they come to this space. And so with all that obstacles, we walk alongside them. We want them to know that we want to be part of their journey. So we don't want to take over the role of their parents. We don't claim to be better than their parents or becoming their parents. In fact, we tell the parents we would like to share your journey with your child and be a support system to your family. As your child progresses through the years, we would like to offer that support. And so, yes, it's very important for them to know that life does come with obstacles, and there will be troubles, there will be hardships, and there are ups and there are downs. But it's important for them to have the right tools to navigate through that pathways to reach their goals and dreams.
I love that. And I love that you're making me think about, just finding ways to do things. And I remember when after I matriculated and I went to study. So I went to go study journalism at Peninsula Technikon in Bellville. And we always say my mother used to give me 15 rand a day, and that was for my taxi fare there and back, and to buy 500 ml Coke, which was sort of my breakfast back then. But it was a very like intentional, that's what we had. And sometimes I had no computer, and we didn't have a landline, I think, at that point. And so I remember one assignment I had to write about the road traffic over the holiday season, and my mom gave me 20 rand to buy a phone card. And I would go stand with my notebook and my pen on the corner at the payphone, making these calls to like auto places, and interviewing them. And I love that story. I love remembering that story because it was, as long as you get it done, it doesn't matter how you get it done. And even for me, I remember just thinking, like, wow, a 20 rand phone card. Like, that was a huge sacrifice that my mom actually had to make to give it to me. And so standing on the corner was even just a privilege for me to be able to do that. I wanted to ask you about, so you talk about this perception. So you have teenage pregnancy and people are speaking, these aunties are speaking in front of you. They're there and they're just saying, oh, her life is over. And you internalize this, and you go on a path where you're trying to survive and make a life out of this life that is over. There's nothing bigger. But often that perspective, especially, I want to say especially in South Africa, but our local narrative is that many young people are not seen for their potential. They are seen for where they come from, or the mistakes that they've made, and there's a broader stereotype of South African youth, especially I think South African youth of color. And so, I think I want to ask you how important it is to help them understand that they matter. And also how important it is to not speak like that in front of young people.
I'm just thinking there's even this talk around Mitchell's Plain, a young person coming from Mitchell's Plain. So if you take a child from Mitchell's Plain and you take them to Sea Point, for example, then there's, they're from Mitchell's Plain, nothing good can come from Mitchell's Plain. But I mean, history tells us that Mitchell's Plain is the host or the playground for actresses and lawyers, and just like any other community on the Cape Flats or in the world as a whole. I think that with young people, the different communities, I don't think that you are where you come from. I think where you come from is who you are. Let me explain that. I often find that young people, their goal is to want to be out of their community. I don't want to live here anymore. I just want to live in Bishop's Court or whatever. If everybody's going to have that perception, then soon that community will die out. It will no longer exist. If those who want dreams or have dreams exit the community, what's going to remain behind? And so I often tell young people, you must be the light in your community. You must make a difference. You must be the economic contributor for that community to rise up. I think Manenberg is a beautiful example of there's so many beautiful things happening in Manenberg because of the community coming together. And often you find in some of our communities, there is not that togetherness. I think Strandfontein, the community I come from, took a while to come to a place where the community stands together and they understand the needs of the community. There was often a split. I remember way back.
Wendy, I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt you. We have to take a short break. Okay. But we're going to come back and continue this conversation. Okay. We will be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we are speaking about inspiring, empowering, and uplifting children and youth. And now we say children are the future, but often the investment that we put into them doesn't match that. We are sitting down with Wendy Abrahams, who is the founder of the Advace Edukos foundation. And so we've been chatting about some of the programs that Wendy's organization has been doing in certain areas working with youth. And one of the questions that we've really been trying to answer is, how do we really see them for the individual potential, and what kind of things we need to say to them, and how can we support them to really believe in themselves and overcome the barriers of youth. And there are in South Africa many barriers. Wendy, some of the things that you've mentioned already has been sort of unemployment, teenage pregnancy, the lure, I think, of gangsterism and drugs because there's no alternative. And I think, during the break we were chatting and you were saying, children need options. So I'm going to give you some context. Often when I look back at my youth, and I was not interested in sport, but really what we had at school was sport. And I was, my daughter says, as my daughter calls it, a nerd. I was a nerd, I had glasses and everything. And all I wanted to do was sit in a corner and read. I would have loved, when I think about it now, options like drama, options like a writing program or reading program. And if there were smaller programs, and I'm just going to say, like, these are my opinions. If they were, and I think certain people were involved in programs, some of the kids were sort of handpicked by the school to, because I meet somebody later and they say, oh, I did this, or I did this love life thing, or I did this thing. And I was like, well, we never heard about it even, right? So certain kids are handpicked, and those are often the kids who stand out. But I do want to say, I did a valedictory at my old high school. I was an unorthodox choice, because usually it's a doctor or a lawyer. And they said, they decided to bring me on. And I remember opening the speech saying, yes, my CV sounds impressive now, but in matric, I would have been like, a C student. I was just, a wallflower. I wasn't noticeable. I was very sort of under the radar. And I sort of half dedicated the whole speech and valedictory to the C students, the ones who didn't get any awards. I got 0 awards at school, but I even got a C for English, even though I was a writer. So we were just speaking about, I wanted to ask you, like, how important it is also to be seen and be witnessed. And I want to bring something back for you. You said you were bullied in primary school. You said that during high school your goal was to be seen, and it's important for children to be seen, to be, before the show, actually, you were speaking about how these aha moments, or these moments of brightness, when you look at someone, regardless of their age, and just say, what you've drawn is amazing. And they're just amazed that someone noticed them. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it starts with the conversation with young people. We are so busy as adults doing our own thing that we often forget to stop and speak to them. Just have a conversation with them, or just asking them, how are you? What have you been up to? What's happening at school? Showing interest, but genuine interest. Hearing their story. Something else we spoke about earlier on was that child that's labeled the naughty child. And but how often do we stop to investigate the reason for that behavior? Because that behavior could just be a symptom of something much deeper. And that's really what I like to do. So I have this young man in one of our after school programs, and he's been labeled at school. I remember coming to one school as a substitute teacher, and I'm in the classroom, and the teacher said, "O juffrou, los net daai kind, want daai kind is soos 'n gangster en die ene slaap heeldag, vergiet van hom." And I thought that was a moment for me, that was an opportunity for me to get to know them. And really, my time at the school was invested in that to young people. And I remember the one specifically came to me at the end, and he ran after me and he said, "Miss, I just want to say thank you." I said, "Oh, thank you, my boy. Why are you saying thank you?" He said, "No, for everything, miss. Just thank you." And I don't remember doing anything amazing or like, for me, I was just showing interest. I was just having conversations with this boy. I was just noticing him, and he said thank you, and that thank you was so big for me, and for him. So I think it begins with conversations, with us being authentic with young people, allowing them to be authentic. We're often telling them to be quiet. We're shutting them up. We don't give them time. Jy's 'n kind, play with the children, but yet we place them in the adult world. We give them adult responsibilities, but we want them to be children. We take away their innocence most of the time. We take away the innocence of our children, and then we play this ball with them. 1 minute we expect them to be like a child, and the next minute we're telling them the adults, they need to do adult things. I mentioned to you one of the things I've learned. In fact, it was earlier this year.
Last year.
Last year. Oh, I must still get used to the 2023. Last year, yes, 2022. One of the things I've learned was looking at the rights, children's rights and the responsibilities, and how we emphasize the rights, and children too. They will often remind us, it's my right for this or my right. And this person told me, she said to me, what about the responsibilities that we often remind parents, children? So they give us their rights, and then we give them their responsibilities back. But even they don't have that capacity to take on that responsibility. And we sometimes give children the responsibilities, but we don't walk that journey. Or we sometimes enable them. So it could be either or. So instead of showing the child how to do something, we do it for them. And so they never learn. Or we tell them to do it, and we don't allow them to make mistakes. And so they do it, they make a mistake, and then we say, you're stupid, you did it wrong, you're not going to do it again or so. So, and that breaks the child. And so it takes someone to come along, and like in my life, a lot of people to come and break that negativity for you to rise up again. And sometimes no one comes. And that's why our young people end up gangsters, drug addicts, and then die. And then that was their life, and it's so a sad life to live. And and suicide. Look how big is suicide amongst our teens now. Anxiety. Back in the day, their children didn't suffer from anxiety, but now it's big. Or we didn't hear about it, but now it's exposed, and so now we know our young people, and that is increasing. More young people are ending up in hospitals than adults with anxiety. And so I really feel that as adults, we need to take the initiative to reach out. We need to show interest randomly even. You don't have to wait till you volunteer in a program, or you can be walking in a mall, and as an adult, you can see this child looks down, or this child could do with some motivation. And even if you don't, you walk over and you say, you look beautiful today. That child, what? Me? Really? And that's such beautiful moments. And it's those moments that we sometimes miss. We celebrate things that should be, that shouldn't be celebrated. It should be like that. Example, a child walking and helping a granny over the road with groceries, and then it's in the newspaper. That should be a norm for children. They need to know to respect a granny, to help a granny with bags and so forth. A teacher reaching out to a child, going the extra mile. The teacher should. I feel that we should. The energy that we have and everything else that we have in our toolbox, everything that we have, we need to give back. Because otherwise we're just going to sit with all this stuff, and it means absolutely nothing to those around us. So I feel that we take on all of these things, but we need to give it back. We need to share what we have inside of us.
So Wendy, that's really interesting that you bring in sort of mental health and the rates of anxiety and some of the other things that kids are dealing with. And I read a study once that said one of the core things that you can do, that can be done to bridge the gap between rich and poor, is teach kids to read. And so reading early, that is just becomes a game changer academically for them as they move sort of through the system. And I was just thinking about the things that you are speaking about, because these kids, when we speak about mental health, we also can't ignore, and I think I often say this, that it's intersectional. They are dealing with greater levels of domestic violence. They are dealing with greater levels of crime, ongoing violence, gangsterism in their communities, and a lot of these things are providing extra anxiety for them. And so I love that you are speaking about things that we can do and ways that we can speak to them, recognizing sort of how they are feeling and just paying them more attention. Because when we think about reading being this game changer, I think also just like noticing them and speaking to them and seeing them can also be a game changer when we think about, someone just recognizing their potential. Which brings me to, before we go, we have to talk about some of the programs that you do. There's an academic focus, there's also an art focus, art for healing, that has got a psychosocial focus. Tell us about some of the programs that you do.
Okay, so within our after school space, it's a little bit different in the two spaces. Our after school program in Mitchell's Plain is at Rockland's Library. So it is literacy focused. So there we have reading classes, and we go back to the fundamentals, the phonics, because young people, we find they don't know how to sound, and that's why they're struggling with reading. So we go back to sounding. And that we do in partnership with the library. They have a reading program as well. We teach them computer skills, basic computer skills, and then we bring in the art. So they on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on Thursdays is quite art focused. And we do different art mediums. We work with different mediums just to give them a variety so that they can find one that they love. And in our space, everything is voluntary. So if we have a session, for example, we do a mosaic session, and the child feels that they do not want to participate, there is a reason. The child might not be able to connect with that piece of artwork for a specific reason, and it could even be a mental reason. We then have a conversation with that child afterwards. So we give them the materials and they decide what they want to do with it. And often at the end of the day, they give us something. They produce a piece of artwork which is completely different to the rest, but it is okay. It is their piece of artwork, they weren't coerced into doing or forced into doing. Like, for example, teacher finished off their project or that type of thing. It's theirs and they can be proud of their piece.
Can I ask you something quickly before you go? How important is it to give them free creative expression? I'm going to tell you, because I read something the other day, that free play is as important as sort of directed academic stuff. And I learned this lesson personally when I bought Lego for my daughter. And I also loved the Lego. So after she went to go sleep, I did it properly for her.
Yeah.
And she was only 3, but she was so upset the next day.
Yeah.
That I thought, okay, the way you did it was your creative expression.
It is very important, because remember, that is our perspective. When we do something, that's according to us. But when they do it, that's according to them. So it might even be beautiful to them. And that's, I also often tell my staff, don't guess what that piece of artwork is. Don't say, oh, that's a beautiful flower because it looks like a flower to you. You must ask that child, tell me about your drawing. Tell me about your piece of artwork. Allow them, because that flower might just be a person to them. It might represent something completely different, and that might just crush their spirit. So it's really just about giving them a voice, throughout, with all our, and to be creative with your, whatever your offerings are. Your activities need to be creative. So for the reading, you can't have a session where you call up the child and come and read a story. You must be creative. You must have theatrical play or dress like your favorite book, and you just need to step up a little bit with our children today. Otherwise you will lose them. So in our baby after school program, we bring in theatre as well, theatre performance. So they do dancing, they do rap, spoken word. They also do art, but we find a lot of opportunities for them to go to different spaces where they can be exposed. We do academic, they do coding as well. So we partner with Lady Code in Johannesburg, and they do online coding classes. We've just recently received a donation of up to 20 computers, desktop computers, and so we want to grow that program in 2023. We have a NEET program for young people that are no longer in school or education or training, and we give them the necessary skills to make them more employable, but we also walk their journey with them. I mean, they come to our program, we have it quarterly, And every quarter or every second quarter, so which would be the third quarter of the year, we find that we lose them because they now have jobs. So clearly what we are contributing is making a difference, even if it's just to increase their confidence, because sometimes they have the capacity to find a job, but they don't have confidence to go for that interview. So they fail the interview, even though they, they can do, they have the skills. And then we just invest in their lives. We want them to just be real and just have these conversations with them. We have lots of excursions, so we expose them to the world out there, because some of them say they haven't been out of Mitchell's Plain, or, so we give them that opportunities. And just driving on the bus and that's water, and they haven't been to that beach before, or the things they see for the first time, just to be part of that moment. That is, for us, that is so rewarding, to be part of a child's first moment. It's like having a baby and watching your baby have the first step of eating for the first time. It's exactly the same feeling inside.
And I want to ask, and these things are important, right? Because I'm always reading about, the difference in literature. I'll give you an example. So I work with a lot of nonprofits. I love reading very high-level business strategy books. And when you read high-level business strategy books and the things that it takes for a business to grow on a very large scale, so the type of strategies that you need, and I always say, Nike and Adidas will spend millions on an advertising campaign to get people to buy their tackies, and yet we invest so little in our communications for strategic communication. So those kinds of things. And so when we think about education, you read sort of higher level, more privileged. Kids need to travel to be able to create greater context of the world. They need to, the types of things that they read. I am well read, but I spent my it wasn't structured. It was just whatever I could get my hands on. Magazines, the cartoons and newspaper from my dad, and anybody else's library books wherever I went. Right? So I didn't know when I started working. And those are things that made me nervous. Not having exposure to the same things as other people. So I think I want to just expand on the fact that just because we don't have doesn't mean that travel is important. That giving them new experiences is important, right?
Yes. And also just on the not having, so our organization, we don't yet have a lot of funding for resources. So I think we are where we are today because of our partnerships. We collaborate, and people that can that share the same vision, we welcome them and share the resources. So, for example, I'm like a hoarder now. So yogurt tubs we can use as little bowls for mixing paint. Sucker sticks, ice lolly sticks. And
they sell sucker sticks at Crazy Store,
exactly.
right?
So you buy a pack of 50 for 20-30 rand, or you can pick them up, you clean them, and you can use them. And so we're also teaching them to recycle, without really you having a program, the recycle, they're actually just doing it naturally. It's become natural for them. And they're so cute. They now have that same traits. So they will walk and they will say, Teacher Wendy, this we can use,
Wendy, I'm so sorry. We're actually out of time. Do you have a last word for the audience? I'm sorry, we could have, we could go on and on about it, but I wanted to give you just like any last words as you go out, I think, to parents out there who have kids, to educators, to communities. Like, what is the takeaway?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, I would like to tell parents and teachers and role models in the community is to reach out to your young people, have conversations with them, listen to their stories, listen to their heart desires, and just continue to motivate them to reach their dreams.
Thank you. And so that is all we have for the conversation. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we have been speaking about inspiring, empowering, and upskilling youth. Now we are almost at the end of the show, and we've had such a great conversation about what is necessary to boost the morale of young people in order for them to grow into themselves, better believe in themselves, and build a better life for themselves. Now, before we go, we are going to have a look at a short video about how to raise better, kinder, and healthier young girls and boys. Let's have a look.
You have to empower girls, but you have to give complementary education for boys, that they have to be egalitarian. You have to nurture this. You have to talk to them all the time that, of course, girls can do this. You have to make movies that show that girls can do anything boys. They can drive trucks, they can be superheroes, including that, of course, you can marry Joe or Jack. You're teaching them about sexuality. This kind of work is important because masculinities is more rigid than femininities. So we allow girls a little more space to play with their identities. Boys, a lot more rigid as soon as they get to a certain age, that they can't wear certain things, they can't be pushing prams. But we allow girls to play with trucks. So you have to have this complementary work about patriarchy and about attitudes around equality for boys, girls, and other genders.
We talk about gender a lot. Even with my son, he plays with dolls. They would tease him and say, "Hey, why are you playing with this? Why are you wearing this? Why are you wearing a skirt today?" I said, "There's nothing wrong. If he wants to play with girls, if he wants to put on a weave, it's okay. It suits him." And if we go to the shop, if he says, "I want you to buy a doll for me, the Barbie doll with high heels," I do that. And people at the shop will say, "Hey, but why are you buying a boy this?" I said, "He wants to." And I would educate them, even at the mall. I say, "Listen here, if I buy this, I'm not buying this because I want him to be a lesbian or gay or what, but I'm teaching him nurturing because he's going to be a father. So you must know that if you've got a girl, you must do certain things to a girl. You must buy pads and so on." So he's fully aware. If I ask him if I'm taking a bath, he says, "Oh, please bring me panty liner." I will know what a panty liner is. Even all of them, they know, because that's how I am. I'm open. That's the kind of relationship we have.
You have to think very hard about the work that you need to put in raising kind, generous, happy, egalitarian boy. Actually, this is a lot of work, a lot of invisible work.
How are we empowering girl children when they have to constantly be the ones to push back? And so you've got to get men, male identifying people, masculinities, to recognize how they will benefit from an egalitarian society, that they can have more engaged relationships with other men, more engaged relationships with their intimate partners, more engaged relationships, with their children. And I think this is something that we were talking about before in some of the research that we've been doing, the workshops we've been doing. There was a little boy who was playing with a shoe, and he was tying it on his back, and he was putting it to sleep, and all that kind of thing. And so our colleagues in the workshop raised the issue of whether he could have a doll. And that's just gone one step too feminine. But then we're surprised when young men grow up to become completely disengaged and unable to care and empathize and look after children.
The work of raising girls who are amazing, who are awesome, is a constant thing. It just has to happen every day. Talking about it, modeling. But then if the neighbor doesn't raise boys to be like that, you have a problem. Yeah. You really have a problem, because the violence is going to be there. The inequality, they just pushing back that, no, you think you're awesome, but I'm going to show you're not awesome. You can't be walking here. You can be in this space.
Yeah. I just wish I could unsee a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing and not care, because it just makes you think too much, right? But I feel like the opposite burden, I actually don't want to have it, where I become complicit by not seeing and not caring.
So if there's inequality outside, and you are this family or this person, what do you do with it? Do you live it forever?
What do you mean?
The inequality that you see outside in the school, you take your kid to school, and they're teaching them gender is this. This is how it is. You can't stand in this queue. You can't do this. You can't want to play soccer because soccer is only for boys. You can't do robotics. Robotics only for boys. You can't play the guitar. So they're always streaming your child. What do you do with that?
That was a short video on how to raise kinder and healthier girls and boys. And that brings us to the end of our show. I think if there are any takeaways, and the easiest things that we can do to help is to talk to young people, as we've heard in the video and during the interview. What we need to do is just speak to them with authenticity, see them, witness them, and ask them, if you can, what is wrong. And that's all we have for this evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lenina Rassool. Goodbye.